Okay, we're live on Facebook.
Take it away, folks.
Wait for the flag there and we'll go. Great.
Okay, Cindy.
Okay, so we'll start the pledge here. I pledge allegiance
allegiance
to the flag
To the flag
of the
of the
United States of America and
to
to the republic for which it stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and justice for all. Great.
Okay.
Okay, and now I'll do the roll call. I know Che is absent. Scott,
Here.
okay, and Marty,
here.
Paul,
Here.
Abby,
Here.
okay, Wanda,
Here.
Cal. Okay, not sure if he's coming. Brooks,
Here.
Kathy.
Here.
Should I ask if Elizabeth is here, Liz Gallagher? Or maybe Cal will be a little late, I'm not sure.
Sometimes he's down in the public section.
We actually got Liz in the attendees. Shall I promote her to a panelist?
Yes, please.
Okay,
So
okay. And now it's the approval of the agenda.
I'd like to make some alterations to the agenda, just moving things around a bit.
Okay,
Item E, public comment, I'd like to move it after regular calendar items. So E come after F. And to move the swearing in ceremony after the consent calendar if Lynda has arrived. With those
Okay.
changes.
great. Any other changes?
No.
Do I have a motion to approve?
I so move with the changes.
Kathy, and a second?
Second.
Marty.
Brooks,
Okay,
second.
Marty. Okay, let's see. So Scott,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Abby,
Yes.
Wanda,
Yes.
Liz.
I'm here.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yes. Brooks
Yes.
and Kathy.
Yes.
Okay. And now, are there any statements of conflict of interest from any of the council members? Okay, so I'll say there are none. And let's see, correspondence? Scott?
None.
Okay. And
Go ahead.
okay, I was just gonna say, are there any changes or discussion points on the January meeting minutes? Okay,
I move that we accept the minutes as they were presented.
okay,
I second.
and that was Paul, okay. Okay, let me do my roll call here. Scott,
Aye.
Marty, Paul,
Aye.
Abby,
Hi.
Wanda,
Aye.
Liz,
Aye.
Brooks,
Aye.
and Kathy.
Aye. And you did a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you're a great group to work with, so. Okay, and I think I'll turn it over to Scott now.
Okay, well, we're jumping over to regular calendar items. And first up is Nina Hapner She's the Director of Environmental Planning for Kashia Band of Pomo, and we are looking forward to her talking about land management strategies from Pomo's perspective. Thank you, Nina.
You're welcome. So I can go ahead and share my screen. I did some of you may have seen this. The question is similar to when we met at Timber Cove several years ago, and I did a very simple PowerPoint. And so I kept the same PowerPoint and I updated it just a little bit for us because it hasn't really changed. It's just taken, I can see like how my office is. We're still following on the same path, but as everybody knows, as we move forward with stuff, things kind of get in our way. We have to take a step back. We have to wait a moment for things to proceed. So if you'd like, I could go ahead and do the presentation.
Yes, please. The
All
floor is
right,
yours.
let's see if I make sure I've got that one. So it's pulled up. Can you see my desktop?
Yes.
All right. There we go. Okay, so I understand that you'd like to know our management and philosophy, and I'm just going to start out with not everybody. I have the 15th. Well, it was my brother's birthday. Not everybody, and as we know in our communities, agrees with how we implement fire or do things. We all have some things that we do a little differently, and that's not any different with the tribe. But the overall feel is that, as we have seen in the past few years with how intense our fires have become, we're missing something in how we manage our land base. And so the question is, a lot of people I know will ask, like, well, what is fire? Like, what exactly do you mean? I mean, people use a fire to warm themselves. Traditionally, in land management for tribes in California, certainly this area, fire, it's a tool. It's so simple. It is a tool, and we haven't been using this tool. It's an important thing that we need that helps nourish our resources and food production. It is a tool. It is simple as that. If you dig a hole, you're not going to use a spoon. If you don't need to, you'd rather use a shovel. If you're going to put the screw into the piece of wood, hopefully you have a screwdriver and not using the end of your butter knife, you know, those kind of things. And so we see benefits. One thing that we know over time is that there are huge benefits to fire that we have taken out of the landscape. And living in Sonoma County, it amazes me that not until the last probably 5-6 years that people finally understand that we live in a firescape, that Sonoma County is the way it is because how fire has been used to shape the landscape. And fire does a lot of stuff for us. And for anybody who spends enough time outside, you know that when fire comes through, we see a huge reduction in pests. Ticks is one of those things that we see a lot less of. And we see an improvement in our plant materials. I have a picture down here on the bottom, which is a hazel. And that hazel is not only food, but it is used in baskets and a lot of baby baskets. When you can burn or cut hazel down for the straight shoots, the straight sticks that come up, produces very strong material. Without fire to be utilized on that plant as a tool, the fibers are not as strong, they're weaker, and they're just not as prized. And so a lot of tribal people who still collect, they've done some different things about it. In some cases, they will do spot fires around the plant, or they'll cut the plant down so it'll grow the shoots, but the fire provides nourishment. It adds that into the soil, so you don't have to go out and apply fertilizer that's nitrogen rich. It does that with the fire. And it gives us healthy regrowth on our plants. We know that it clears the brush. I think Lake County is a really good example of that. Those fires went through there and it opened it up. Well, in another few years, there's probably going to need to be another fire through there. And as we know, it reduces our fuels, which is a huge thing that's happening right now. And the tribe is actually embarking on some things that will help reduce fuel loading. So an important plant for us, we look at how fire impacts our landscape. So I just showed you a picture of a hazel, but it's also tan oak. And tan oak in Kashia is called shishkale, which is beautiful tree. And when you've been out there, especially in the morning sun or even in the evening sun, when it hits the tree just right, it has this beautiful golden glow. And it's also traditionally a major food staple for the tribe. It is a traditional food. It is high in protein, low in carbohydrates. It's great. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people don't eat it as much as they used to. It does take some time to process. But when we don't have fires, we don't have that tool coming to help replenish the land and nourish it, we end up, as you can see over on one side in the person's hand, there's this little worm that gets into our acorns and it damages the food crop. And I guess we could relate this to as commercial growers apply pesticides on their crops to keep the bugs and insects off. Well, the tribe traditionally used fire to keep the insects down. Remember, as I said, it reduces our pestilence, it reduces our pests. So this is the coastal reserve. I apologize for how this picture is situated. I couldn't get it situated any better, but that's thanks to Google Earth. The picture above is an older picture when the world was still in black and white and there was no color. No, I'm just kidding. But this is the coastal reserve, and you can see the buildings and the barn, the sheep barn over there. And you can see there's a difference in the growth of vegetation. So the coastal reserve, before the tribe purchased it, as we know, was owned by the Richardsons, and it's traditional Kashia territory. And it was managed for timber. Besides having cattle and sheep on it, it was managed mainly for timber. And in those times, it's the timber that'll give you money that you can put back into your property or make your repairs and stuff. So we're dealing with a large growth of fuel in some cases, but also a forest that doesn't have a lot of resiliency at this point. And so the tribe will be doing a timber harvest this year on the coastal reserve. When we purchased it, it already had one on there, and we adjusted it to maximize the older trees, to take out those trees that aren't as highly merchantable, but will help. We're hoping, I mean, that's our plan, looking at how we want, what we want in the forest, that will help push to the bigger trees, take out the trash. I don't want to say trash trees, that's not a right term, but take out the trees that aren't going to produce and are going to cause more problems later, so that we can help this forest build back its resiliency. It's something that hasn't been managed this way in a very long time, certainly over 125 years. And it's going to take more than my lifetime to see some of that come back. And it's interesting, as we talk with this with our tribal membership, some people are go for it, let's do it. And others are really hesitant because they grew up in the era of heavy logging. And so they've seen some of the devastation that logging can cause. Well, the other thing that we've got going on is we have these grasslands, and these grasslands are really heavy in thatch. And anybody who has seen a grass fire knows to be terrified of it because the thing moves very quickly. But the other thing that we have in here is we have a lot of non-native species. And so we're not finding a lot of our traditional species that some people would still like to collect for food. And so we've been working with Abby, and I've been working, mainly Abby has been working with NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, to map some of our grasslands, because we are in the process of putting together, not only with our forest management plan that's been completed for this, but also a grassland management plan. And our hope is eventually, well, our hope, we will put fire back into this landscape. And we know to do it slowly because there's a lot of material here. It might start with grazing first, because we don't want to see this. We don't want to see that happen. Or that scared us, right? That was wall bridge. That's not wall bridge. I couldn't find a good photo, but that we were worried about that. But sorry, I'll go back. But to add, it might be having cattle or sheep on there to reduce that thatch before we bring fire back into it. So a lot, at least with our tribal council and the support we have from people who gather and who look for mushrooms on this property, it is still one of the areas that there's a lot of mushrooms that grow. They want to see us promote the resources. that are there so that those can be managed. And that again is about building that resiliency back into that forest. So we've got a lot of work to do with this. Do you want me to wait for questions at the end?
We'll do questions at the end.
Okay. So like I said, we don't want to see this. We've seen plenty of this in the last few years. This is terrifying and hurts our lungs. And it really is damaging to the landscape. And so we had what even is fueling us even further into trying to move along with reducing our fuel loading and to build this resiliency back, because we want it, as we know, the more open your forest is, I look at it and a lot of people look at it right now, the way our forests are set up, they can't really breathe. They are our lungs on the earth. They are our lungs on the land. But the way that they have been allowed to tangle up, it's like having congestion. So we need to clear it. So the question is, how do we look at fire now? I think some people's views are starting to change, but I grew up with this guy. And I just want to preface here that this is not a bad thing, but he is a very powerful image. And that image was very successful in suppressing the use of fire in a landscape as a tool. Nothing bad about Smokey. He's an awesome guy. He's taught a lot of kids a lot of good things. And I think the hardest thing to teach people is these last few years where people have lost homes, people have lost lives, that how bad fires can get when we don't respect it. Because we were taught to fear and suppress it. And now those strategies are being reformatted. So we've all seen these photos. This area burned in the 1960s, if you guys remember. I know some people probably know their fire history. But in the 1960s, there wasn't a lot of homes up there, and the fire was stopped before it got all the way up to the top of that ridge. But it's something to be more mindful of, and we have to be more serious when we talk about our wildland urban interface. So this is a ridge line. I don't think people don't think about it on how the land flows and how things travel. And it's a shame because it impacts how you build and how you place things. And so that's something that we're really working through with the tribe as the tribe acquires lands and looks at what we're going to do with it. In most cases, people want their natural resources and to have access to it. So again, it goes back, how do we build that resiliency into our forest? And fire is going to come into that. But we're also going to come up against making sure that we protect people in our community, because the rancheria where the houses sit are on a ridge. We have to be mindful of that. We have to protect that. So our future goals and fire is to reintroduce it carefully. So the top picture is an area on the coastal reserve that is just packed. It's kind of scary. Bottom picture is on the reservation, just as the crow flies, less than 4 miles away. And so when we had the Walbridge fire get very close to us, basically we were waiting for it to hit one more drainage and we knew it would fly right towards us. We had crew out there thinning and opening all around the homes. And so we knew that needed to happen. And thankfully, some of the people that are doing that some of our crew that were doing that, they understood what plants were important, what things to be mindful of. And as we move forward with looking at this, we want to make sure that Kashia knowledge is put into how we manage the forest. And that's actually an education, not just for us, because we're having to learn to stand our ground with the entities that have been managing forests. I mean, the state of California under CAL FIRE, they have the forest rules that they use, the forest practice rules. We don't always agree with all of those rules. We don't always agree with the county on how they think forests should be managed, but it's an education on both sides, and we're learning. And we have some people who are very much in our side, like, yeah, let's burn, let's put some fire in there, let's make some changes, which is good. So I remember I mentioned about the prairie lands or the grasslands out on the coastal reserve, and we might use cattle, but you can see this is really thick in here. And even as us as staff, when we walk through there, sometimes we trip and fall over the vegetation that's in there. You get your feet caught in it. And you know, we wouldn't be adverse if a few elk found their way out to our area. We would welcome them with open arms. They're important to Kashia as well. You guys have probably heard about the male elk that's been roaming around harassing the cattle, which he's looking for someone. He needs some girlfriends. But we've seen evidence of him with some of the bottle brush shape on the trees where he eats around them. So we wouldn't mind finding a few more of his buddies up there. I don't know if everybody around us would like to see them up there, but we would not be adverse to it. So I hope I answered your questions. I wanted to keep it simple. I didn't want to get too much into it. It's my contact information, and certainly you have Abby on your group, so she's always a good source of information or contact. But we're still plodding along to get to that point. Didn't anticipate a whole year of shelter in place and limited work days, having to lay off workers and not having some work done. But we'll get there. We're persistent, and as tribal people, as Indigenous people, we're resilient, so it'll happen.
Okay, I happen to be a neighbor with this property, and we all look forward to the herd of elk. Right? I haven't had one negative. So is there anyone on the council that has questions or comments?
Scott, this is Paul.
Yes.
First of all, thank you so much, Nina, for the presentation. It would be wonderful to see elk back there too. And you people that are putting this project together, it sounds like you're going to be very careful, and it sounds like just a wonderful way to manage the land. Can you tell me what the boundaries are for the timber harvest, like the north-south boundaries and also the east boundary?
It doesn't go all the way up to the boundaries of each of the property. So it is pretty much, so let me see if I can go back. Oh, that's not going to give you a good picture. So most of the timber, there's two main sections. We have a north section and we have a southern section. And it's really targeted, it's not targeting large trees. We want to see some of our old growth come back. So whereas some people are like, oh, we want the old trees, because it gives us more money. We're like, well, no, we kind of want the old trees because we want a continuous canopy. And we know that the benefits of having that, we're going to see other resources come back that people collect, not just only mushrooms, ground tea or chayu, we have some Labrador tea in there that people like to collect. There's a lot of things in there. And you only get that with a healthy forest. And so a lot of the target are the older trees. I don't know if you guys have time for me to look for a map. I didn't anticipate that, or I would have had a map in there of the coastal reserve. I apologize, or a better one. But it's the more of the interior. So it's not going direct. It's not going out to the boundaries. From what I recall, it's not out to the very boundaries of the property. It's in that a little bit. We reduced the number of trees, so the volume is less than what we're taking out. We are going to take out redwood. We are taking out Doug fir and white pine, or not white pine, grand fir, sorry, and grand fir. So we aren't taking out bishops for sale, the bishop pines, but as you know, along the coast, we have a lot of bishop pine that's falling. It's either hit its age or it's the kinker's kicking its butt. So we will be pulling down some of that, but we're going to use it on site. The plan is to mill that up to repair the fence line on the coastal reserve. Because people are like, well, why do you want to use bishop pine? I'm like, well, I'm not using it for housing. Can't I use it for a fence? I'm like, isn't that okay? What's wrong with that? Because the tribe did purchase with some of the funds that it got with this last set of CARES money from the government, we purchased a sawmill, a mobile sawmill. So we plan on taking care of some of that, reducing our fuel, but using it actually on site.
Great. Thank you, Nina.
You're welcome.
Any other council members? If not, Leo, is there anyone in the public that would like to ask a question?
Nobody has their hand raised at the moment. If you'd like to, public, if you'd like to ask a question, you can use the raise your hand function, or if you're on your phone, that is *9.
Is the state park, being your neighbor, working well with this idea?
Yes.
Okay.
We don't seem to have any public comments or questions, Chair.
Okay, well, I really appreciate your coming and speaking, Nina. This is very instructive to all of us, and I have acreage just like that, and I appreciate the view, the approach that you're taking. It's one that I want to take too.
It's exciting. It's time consuming. It gets a little daunting at times, but it's exciting. I'm hoping that like Abby's relatives, her nieces and her nephew and my children are going to see the rewards of this and be able to go out there and collect and gather, camp, just do things, because the tribe, Kashia, hasn't really had access to the coast except by asking state parks or private landowners if they can access the land through that. And that's really not appropriate. I mean, it's not okay. It's a very sad fact. But now they can. Now they just have to deal with their own tribal folks about accessing land. And that doesn't always go over well with everybody, but it's a lot better of a choice than having to ask somebody who isn't from the land, who isn't Kashia, who doesn't have their roots in that land by culture and time. So it's a process, and as I said, it's a learning process for all of us. There was a question, somebody asked how large the coastal reserve was. It is 678 acres. So I saw that on the Q&A. And Abby, you're like, I'm glad that you guys have Abby. She's the one who gets to play out there the most. So she's got the fun job out there, and just has a lot of knowledge about what's going on out there. And there's so many things. Besides fire, we want to always make sure that we don't disconnect the upper part of the land with the ocean, because that part of the land, I mean, we have five waterways that dump directly into the ocean. 2 of them are larger than the other ones. And there may not be fish in there, but what comes off of that land impacts that ocean and what goes out into that. And we certainly don't want to see dead zones. We know we already have impacts with species, and for Kashia, that ocean is the grocery store. So to see your grocery store be depleted is sad. I mean, as well as the upland is part of your grocery store. So building resiliency on the upper part of the land means also tying it to the ocean. So whatever comes off it, we've got to be mindful of that.
Yes, Nina, I think being careful of the riparian areas, will make sure that the wildlife have a place for water and a place to live.
Right. So because we are going to be doing a bear project, well, hopefully we get funded for it. If we get funded for it, we'll be doing a bear project up there. We'll see if we're finding bears on the coastal reserve, but we don't know yet. We asked for money. We'll see if we get it.
We're always walking through. Okay, any other questions from the public? And thank you, Nina.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
You're welcome to stick around, or if you have something else, thanks very much.
You're welcome. I'm going to go. I'm closing a grant, so I'm going to go work on that. Thank you so much.
Take care.
You as well.
Okay, moving on. I skipped over doing the swearing in, but we can do that now. Is Supervisor Hopkins present?
I am.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. And we have one alternate that needs swearing in. I'll hand that over to you.
Wonderful. All right, so I will repeat the magic words and then pause. The only thing that will be different is that I will say I state your name, and then you're actually going to state your name. And then I'll move on, and I'll make sure that I take enough pauses so that you don't have too much to remember. So you can go ahead and raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Ann Yager,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations, and thank you so much for joining the team. It's great to meet you virtually, see you virtually.
Thank you. Thank you. The honor's
Thank you.
mine.
Thank you, Anne. Welcome. Lynda's doesn't have a presentation per se, but she's certainly here to field questions. Does anyone on the council have questions or comments?
It's a remarkable silence.
Silence, yes.
I'm surprised not to hear any questions from Bodega Bay. Hint, hint.
Yeah.
All
Right
right.
here. Do I need to ask the question or do you know what I'm going to ask?
I'm guessing that I know what you're going to ask, but go for it so that in case anyone in the audience who doesn't know what you're going to ask, so they can be
Okay.
made aware.
How are things going with Bodega Bay Fire and their funding so we won't lose our wonderful paramedics out here?
So this is a great question. As everyone is aware, Measure B did not pass. And so, there has been really, truly a fiscal crisis, both on the fire services side as well as on the school side. And, Bodega Bay was looking at some very stark budget scenarios that would involve layoffs basically at the conclusion of this fiscal year. I am hopeful that we'll be more moving forward, certainly with one solution and another that is a possibility that I will also explain to you. The first one is that the county a couple of years ago did provide what was supposed to be a one-time multi-year contract for enhanced staffing. And this included $500,000 a year for Bodega Bay Fire Protection District. It also provided up staffing at Geyserville as well as Gold Ridge. And so they were also recipients of these funds. The goal was that we would give these funds and then hopefully Measure G, the fire sales tax, would pass to help carry that enhanced staffing forward into the future. Unfortunately, Measure G did not pass either, although that may go back on the ballot in June of 2022. However, that's a long way away, and we do have a current fiscal crisis at Bodega Bay Fire Protection District. So we are hoping next month on consent calendar to bring this enhanced upstaffing contract up for renewal. And we would provide either 18 or 24 months of that funding, again, hoping to bridge to another attempt at the fire sales tax measure. And so it would go to Bodega Bay as well as the other agencies that had previously received the funds. I also want you all to know that tomorrow at 2:30 p.m., I will be meeting with the Bodega Bay Fire Protection District. We've got the chair of the board, Liz Martin, as well as the labor representative, Justin Fox, is invited, Assistant Chief Hertzberg and Sonoma County Fire District Chief Mark Hine, as well as the Taxpayers Association Representative Dan Drummond and representatives from Sonoma County Tourism to discuss possible avenues forward that would shift some of the general fund TOT towards fire and emergency services. Currently, Sonoma County Tourism receives about $2.3 million a year of general fund TOT. And they also have other avenues for their own, revenue generation. They've got a business improvement assessment that they could actually kind of, close some loopholes on that side and then come out revenue neutral, even if we were to shift some of that money away from the advertising, the destination marketing organization of Sonoma County Tourism, where it's currently going, and into fire and emergency services. So that is another potential avenue, but that would require a vote of a majority or a supermajority, depending on the timing of the Board of Supervisors. So that's, not just my decision, that's the decision of the full Board of Supervisors. So hopefully, we'll make some progress at that meeting tomorrow, but it will certainly be an interesting conversation. So those are a few of the potential avenues. And then we're also, as I mentioned, looking at a, next generation of the fire sales tax that would be going on the ballot in June of 2022. We came very close to passing Measure G the first time around, and unfortunately it failed by a couple thousand votes. So on a countywide measure, right, which is not that much in the grand scheme of things.
Thank you. Any other council members with a question or comment? Jason, are you watching the public for questions?
I am, and currently we don't have any hand raised, but I believe Brooks has a question.
Brooks, please.
Thank you. Lynda, can you tell us if any progress is being made on the derelict burned out house on Highway 1 in Bodega Bay?
I am so glad that you asked that question because we actually even have a formal press release about that with respect to the board actually authorizing the final settlement. And this just occurred on Tuesday. So we are very hopeful that that will be wrapped up and cleaned up very soon. And so I can send you all of the details in written form if you'd like. But it was a formal action. It was reported out by County Council at yesterday's meeting.
Thank you.
One other thing, if I may, through the chair, would it be okay to mention something?
Yes, please.
So this, I think, is of critical importance, and I really appreciated Nina Hapner's presentation. And Abby, if you're on, I would really appreciate it if you might say, because I don't think I have Nina's contact information, but she's really my inspiration and the reason that I went through FFT2, so firefighter type 2 training a couple weekends ago to be able to participate in controlled burns in West County. I got to see her present at a sort of vegetation management workshop that was held in Timber Cove a couple years ago. And her presentation just blew me away. And it really made me realize the utility and the ancient wisdom of looking at prescribed fire as a critical way of managing our landscape in a way that reduces the catastrophic wildfire risk. So I hope that maybe we can send her a follow-up email just to say thank you, or would love to touch base with her personally, but she's an amazing human being and just knows so much on this subject. But why I wanted to bring that up was that on Tuesday, the Board of Supervisors will be taking our first look at the substantial funding that we set aside for vegetation management. So if you all have opinions on how that vegetation management money should be spent, if you think it should go to prescribed fire, if you think it should go to support community-based organizations, that, I have a sense that I would love to get money out the door as quickly as possible, because we do have community-based organizations already doing this work. We're just looking for a little bit of funding to buy a wood chipper or, sort of hire the additional firefighting staff to facilitate a controlled burn. So that will be discussed at the Board of Supervisors meeting on Tuesday. And it will be coming after the consent calendar and another brief item. So I'm estimating that it'll be around 9 a.m. on Tuesday. And I would just invite you to, if you have the opportunity, listen in or call in or even just submit email comments ahead of time, because it's a pretty big deal and we have such a need for these services in West County. So I just wanted to mention that as an upcoming agenda item of interest.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Farmer, we
Yes.
do have a hand raised in the public from Norma Jellison. Would you like to take this?
Yes, please, Norma. And 2 minutes.
Now, I had a question about the availability of funding that was just received from the federal government through the COVID-19 program, and whether any of that funding might be available to assist the fire district.
That is a fantastic question. So in addition to, the monies that were referenced in the Press Democrat article today, we're actually looking at around $110 million total. So we have about 17 million from the state, 90 some from the federal government, and I have staff looking into how flexible this funding could be. Ultimately, that funding will be determined by, majority votes of the members of the Board of Supervisors. So well, I'll just be speaking candidly. I think it would be very politically difficult to try to, focus some of that funding on one particular fire district. If there is a countywide need that could also, be sort of the rising tide that lifts all boats, that could certainly be a proposal that the community and the fire districts and the fire chiefs could advocate for. So that's definitely an idea that's worthy of consideration. And I'm not saying don't try to just fight for funding for Bodega Bay, but I'm just saying, there might be other fire districts who also have similar crises and similar needs. And so we might want to think a little bit more globally to try to gain support from a majority of my colleagues on the board. But great question. And yes, so at least I know that at least some of that funding will be extremely flexible, because in some instances, we'll be able to reimburse ourselves from money that we already spent that was general fund money. So in that case, we'll basically be freeing up the general fund that we had previously invested, and that money will have no strings attached. But even the money that is specifically for COVID relief, I understand is fairly flexible. I'm trying to get more details from staff on the guardrails.
Speaking of COVID, is it time to start thinking about when we can start having these meetings in the same room together in the next couple, 2 or 4 months? I know there's no answer, but it feels like maybe it's coming.
I do feel like it is coming. It's hard to say precisely when. We're really hoping for the much long awaited and promised surge in vaccine supply, right? And this week, we didn't get substantially more than the week prior. And so the vast majority are going to second doses. That said, we also are starting to receive some of the J&J, which is a, one shot and you're done, which is fantastic, because then you don't have that second dose requirement. It's just all done that week. But I really look forward to that day, and I can't wait to all be in the same room. I'm sure still with safety protocols, but with all of you.
Yes. Any other questions? Jason?
We don't have any hands raised.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And we look forward to Tuesday. And thanks. It's good to see everybody. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Moving on, we have Sonoma Coast Western Monarch Conservation Effort. Isis Howard from Gold Ridge Resource Conservation District will talk about the program they have and how we as coastal residents can participate as gardeners and all. Isis?
Yeah, hi there.
Hi, there you are.
Can you hear me all right?
You're great.
Okay, perfect. I will share my screen. 1 second. Let's see here. Sorry, 1 second. All right. Can you see that all right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so, actually, this is not the beginning. There we go. All right. Well, first off, thanks for allowing me to speak on this platform. I'm really excited to be here this evening to talk to you all about Western monarchs along the Sonoma Coast. My name is Isis Howard. I work for one of the 2 resource conservation districts, or RCDs, in Sonoma County. Tonight, I'm hoping to cover a couple different topics. So, and there's only a limited amount of time, so please feel free to ask questions at the end of this presentation, and I'll do my best to answer them as best as I can. I want to provide a brief background before we dive into the status of the Western monarchs along the Sonoma Coast and what you all can do to get involved. So many of us grew up learning about the epic migration of the monarch butterfly, but we often don't address the fact that there are 2 distinct populations of monarch butterflies. There's the eastern migratory population and the western migratory population. So this evening we'll be focusing on the western migratory population. The main difference between these 2 groups is that the eastern migratory monarch population does that huge migration from Mexico to Canada and back to Mexico. They overwinter in Mexico, which you can see is represented by that red dot. Whereas the western monarch migratory population kind of sticks around in the western United States and travels to the California coastline to overwinter. So as you can see by the arrows in this map, in the spring of each year, the western monarchs migrate north and inland from the coast, and they're searching for milkweed and nectar plants. They're enjoying the warm weather and reproducing. And then as the weather cools, they have a second fall migration where they go back to the California coastline. And they're returning to the same coastal overwintering groves. So these are tree stands that offer a very specific microclimate that protects the monarch butterflies from winter storms and extreme temperatures. So there's a number of known overwintering sites across the state. Some of you may recognize some of these more well-known sites. Maybe you've even been to a few of them. And each year around Thanksgiving and New Year's, the monarch conservationists and volunteers take time to visit each of these sites, and they actually count the number of overwintering monarchs present. These events are called the Thanksgiving and New Year counts, and you can get involved by visiting the website on this slide, westernmonarchcount.org. The data collected from these events provides crucial information and allows scientists to track the status of the western monarch migratory populations. If we focus in on Sonoma County, we know of at least a dozen historical overwintering sites along the Sonoma coast. Our coastline once supported thousands of overwintering monarch butterflies, but in recent years, the groves have appeared empty. And unfortunately, Sonoma County isn't the only area observing a rapid decline in overwintering monarchs. This situation is all too common across all the overwintering sites in California and for western monarchs as a whole. The latest count numbers from this past winter revealed that the western monarch population remains at critical levels, and they even reached a new record low of less than 2,000 migratory monarch butterflies counted across all overwintering sites in the state of California. So to put that number in perspective, we're observing less than 0.01% of the western monarch population from the 1980s. Or in other words, today western monarchs have declined by 99.9% in the past 4 decades alone. So exacerbating the monarch population decline are factors such as habitat loss of both overwintering sites and breeding areas, pesticide use, namely herbicides and insecticides, and climate change, including increased drought severity and frequency and the fall warming trends we're experiencing. Earlier this year, the Xerces Society released this great graphic that maps out priority action zones in California for recovering the western monarchs. So for anyone interested in learning more about the recovery steps outlined in this slide, I would really encourage you all to check out the call to action webpage on the Xerces website. It provides a lot of great information. But basically, there are 5 main steps to recovering western monarchs in the short term. The top 2 being protect and manage California overwintering sites and restore breeding and migratory habitat in California. And that's, basically calling us to plant native milkweed and nectar plants and restore and improve that habitat for them. So, if we look at this graphic, you can see that a large portion of this top priority zone includes Sonoma County, a large portion of Sonoma County is included in this top priority zone. So this is kind of where the RCDs come in and where our work fits in, and hopefully all of you as well. So like I mentioned earlier, I work for one of the 2 RCDs in Sonoma County, the Gold Ridge RCD. So we primarily serve West County, but we do partner with neighboring RCDs like Sonoma, Marin, Napa, and Mendocino, as well as local, state, and federal organizations to address regional and statewide topics like the Western Monarch conservation topic. And the RCD network is very vast. It includes 95 special districts across California, and we serve urban, rural, and suburban communities. So if you're unfamiliar with RCDs, we connect individuals, groups, and organizations to the technical, financial, and educational resources that they need in order to become excellent stewards of the land and other local natural resources. And so some of our current work includes securing private and government grants to help improve the monarch habitat and overwintering sites in West Sonoma County. We partner with a number of organizations and groups, including regional and state parks, the Xerces Society, Creekside Science, other RCDs, private landowners, and different orgs you might know of. And some of the projects we're currently working on include the Sonoma Coast Overwintering Site Management Project. We're assessing some of the known historical overwintering sites along the Sonoma coast. We're going out into the field, checking out these sites, collecting data, and then we're hoping to analyze that data, come up with site recommendations, and develop management plans for 3 to 4 priority sites. And we also are hoping to host educational webinars for coastal community members, so that's kind of where this fits in. We hope to expand this and have a really specific and detailed webinar on how folks can get involved later. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to email me. I'll provide my contact information at the end of this presentation. We're also planning a Monarch planting kit starter sale, or planting starter kit sale. And that's scheduled for May of this year. We're working with local nurseries to provide Sonoma County milkweed and nectar plants for urban and suburban community members to plant in their gardens and yards. And we're also hoping to secure funding to install large-scale monarch habitat projects on working lands and open spaces. So we're currently in the process of negotiating those projects and that funding right now. For those of you who are aware of or have been following our Sonoma Coast Overwintering Site Management Project, we're currently wrapping up our site assessments. So in this image on the left here, you can see the red dots. Those are known historical overwintering sites along our coastline. So our partners have gone out and they've collected fisheye photography, like that circular image you can see, that measures the light and basically, I mentioned this a little earlier, but overwintering sites have certain conditions that support monarchs. So we want to look at light, we want to look at the amount of wind that can come through, and just the overall protection. So yeah, we're contracting with folks at Creekside Science. They're gathering this data. They're currently analyzing the data and developing those site recommendations so that we can create management plans. We have identified top 3 sites, and so those are on Ranch Road, the Bodega Dunes Campground, and Monarch Glen and Sea Ranch. There are other sites, of course, but those are our top priorities as of now that could expand. And so if you would like to get involved, we really encourage you to do a couple of things. One is download the iNaturalist app. Community science is really important. If you take a picture of a monarch that you see in your garden and upload it to iNaturalist, scientists will be able to see your location, and then we can go in and try to do conservation efforts and identify critical habitat for Western monarchs in our area. You could plant native monarch nectar plants and milkweeds. So if you need instructions on the best species for that, the RCDs have developed a Sonoma County milkweed planting guide, so feel free to reach out to me for that, or visit our website or follow us on Instagram and Facebook. It should be posted there. But you can also find it on the Xerces website and I think Monarch Joint Venture website as well. You can also volunteer for those annual Thanksgiving and New Year's counts that I mentioned earlier. You have to train up a little bit, but it's a great way to get out into the field and really explore those special places along our coast. And finally, if you are out on a hike or you live out on the coast, please, please, please contact us if you notice overwintering monarch clusters on private or public land, because I showed you that map earlier with those red dots. We only know what we know of. Sometimes, there might be sites on private land that we just aren't aware of. So if you come across any new information, please check in with us, let us know, and we'll do our best to take action. The RCDs also send out monthly e-newsletters, and we usually have a Monarch update every month. So if you want to sign up for those, you can do so at our website, goldridgercd.org. And feel free to contact me, Isis Howard, at goldridgercd.org. That's my website up on the screen. And if you are in Sonoma RCD's district, you can contact Jacob. But we're happy to connect you with the right person too if you just want to reach out. All right, that's the end of my presentation.
Great. Any questions from the council? Any comments? Sea Ranch. There we go, Wanda.
Yeah, what kind of trees would you usually see them clustered in for overwintering?
So they really like Monterey cypress, Monterey pine, and eucalyptus. So that's the thing is like, for a long time, conservationists were like, we need to take out all the eucalyptus trees. But we've actually found that because Western monarchs are in such grave danger of going extinct, that we really need to be careful about removing eucalyptus stands. We need to be really intentional, and we need to check with wildlife folks and monarch folks before doing so.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So I have a question or a comment. I noticed that planting milkweed along the coast is not what to do.
Correct.
So those of us that are actually between the coast and the first ridge line, is there planting to be done, or is it more just observing?
Definitely work to be done. I'm going to share my screen one more time. So you can see here, this is the priority action zones graphic. So along the coast, we have that green color. So that's where you want to plant nectar plants. So you want to make sure there's no pesticides, or if your neighbor uses pesticides, create some sort of barrier to block pesticide drift. And yeah, you don't want to plant milkweed within 5 miles of the coast.
Right.
But and that's because coastal temperatures they allow the milkweed to grow year round, and year round milkweed causes some problems within monarchs, like there's higher risk of parasite, and it just it cues them in the off season when they're supposed to be overwintering, versus in the spring and summer, that's when they're supposed to be out reproducing and all that. But yeah, so you can make observations and plant a ton of nectar plants. So when the monarchs come out of their overwintering, they're really hungry. So they need food, and especially like early blooming species and late blooming species. Those are the ones to focus on.
So there's a lot of beekeepers along the coast. They would be interested in the same plants then.
Yes, and that's the beautiful thing about monarch conservation work, is monarchs are an umbrella species. So conservation efforts for monarchs benefit a whole bunch of native pollinators and managed pollinators too, like honeybees.
Okay. Jason, any questions from the public? Comments?
We currently don't have any hands raised.
And anyone else from the council? Second chance?
Yeah, Isis, this is Paul. I just have a question. You were talking about the population decrease that looked rather dramatic. Is that the overall population decrease of the monarchs in the western migration, or is it that they're just migrating in a different direction than the coast here?
So these numbers they represent the western migratory population of monarch butterflies. So based on these numbers from the annual counts, we can assume that western monarchs are declining rapidly. However, there have been recent articles published that discuss resident monarch populations. So there's a small population in the Bay Area. I think it's about 12,000 butterflies. They do not migrate. They stay in the Bay Area year round. But these monarchs have higher risks of parasites. Again, they struggle. Yeah, it's a bit complicated. I could share some resources in the chat after if people want to read up on it. But if the graph here and the decline of western monarchs, we're referring to the western migratory population. So that's the monarchs over here in the western United States.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If that's it, last call for questions. Isis, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm curious if Nina's presentation dovetails with your needs. Did you listen to Nina's wildland management, getting a mature forest? And
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of overlap and a lot of partnerships to be explored.
Okay, Abby. Thank you. And we'll look forward to more monarchs and our efforts. Okay, we'll move on to Carrington Ranch acquisition plan. Steve Arrett, Sonoma County Regional Parks. I'm not sure if someone is coming from Sonoma County Ag and Open Space, but Steve, are you here?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, there you are.
All right.
You want to take it?
Sure. Yes. Interim General Manager Hart is unable to be with us tonight, and we will send her our regards. She sends you hers. So it'll be me tonight. So my name is Steve Arrett. I'm the Planning Manager for Sonoma County Regional Parks, and I've been with the department for about 23 years or so. And we are very excited to be the new owners of the 335-acre Carrington Coast Ranch, which is going to be a future open space park and preserve. And I've been asked tonight to provide a kind of a brief update on the project, where things are at, and what some of the next steps will be. I don't have a big presentation, but I do have a few things I'll share. So let me see if I can give it a go here. So here is an aerial view of the property. And to orient you, Salmon Creek is over here on the right. The graphic is kind of rotated, so north is not up. You'll see the north arrow there. The state park maintenance facility is right after, right to the left or to the north of Salmon Creek. You have a whole bunch of beaches. Many of the names you'll recognize. You may not know No Name Beach or Rabbit Ear Beach, kind of insider names there. But Miwok, Coleman, Arch Rock, Marshall Gulch, that forms kind of the frontage on the other side of Highway 1. So the property extends to Marshall Gulch to Salmon Creek. Coleman Valley Road bisects the property right here. And there's a handful of existing ranch buildings that you see identified here from times long ago. Most of those are still standing. And the brief background is the Agricultural Preservation and Open Space District purchased this property in 2003 for state parks. State parks began a planning process and completed an immediate use, immediate access plan, which is what this graphic is from. This is one of the many exhibits in there. They completed it in approximately 2011, which is way after they pretty much said we're unable to take additional properties. So in the intervening years, Sonoma County Regional Parks has stepped in to own, manage, and open for delicate public access. In December is when we took ownership, and the board's action was last summer. And we are so thankful for Sonoma County Ag and Open Space and all the work, all the stewarding they've done throughout the years, taking care of the land, keeping it intact, grazing it, tracking the natural resources, taking care of the ranch buildings even. Super helpful. So we're not starting from scratch. There's a lot of work has already been done. A lot of planning work has already been done by state parks. And to further all these goals, Ag and Open Space provided us with funding to launch the interim access planning. And in addition, we have brought our own money. Thank you, Sonoma County voters, for Measure M, Parks for All. And we've also written grants and been successful with the State Coastal Conservancy. So we've put together a funding package to not only provide initial, and I'll explain this in a moment, but initial guided access all the way through master planning and then eventually a phase 1 opening. And none of this will be a quick process. So what's ahead of us here? We hope to or intend to conduct by reservation small groups of tours for the general public to tour the site with staff to really show the public who hasn't been out there what the lay of the land is and become familiar with it and to enjoy it. We don't have all the details worked out. Some of you may have participated in what we call our park preview days for Mark West Creek Regional Park. Big hit. And this is going to be very different. We know we have a very constrained parking situation. So we're looking at off-site parking and probably will have a small van to shuttle a COVID appropriate number of visitors to the site to enjoy an existing mowed trail that I'll show you here with my cursor. This has been mowed in by Open Space over the years, and it kind of wraps through here, and it comes out to an overlook of not just Salmon Creek, but all of Bodega Bay and South Salmon, all the way down to Horseshoe Cove and Muscle Point, and it's just a unique view. And so we're going to very carefully open this by reservation and certain set times. The planning phase is kicking off simultaneously, and we'll be having a whole range of public engagement, whether it's online surveys or intercepts in person, different types of stakeholder engagement, different types of voting, but we want to hear from the community. With that said, the property comes to us with a conservation easement, and that easement is very, very specific and limits the activities and development of what can occur on the property. So there's just a little bit we can maneuver in with it. So just to give you a sense, what is allowed is a small parking area in the area where there's existing kind of gravel surfacing. There is the ability to do a range of trails. There's ability to potentially reuse some of the buildings, but currently the main buildings are inhabited by Townsend's long-eared bats, which need to be left alone for a long period of time. And we intend to also explore other types of recreational uses, including the possibility of camping. We are allowed to graze, and we are investing heavily in the grazing infrastructure, both us along with the help from Ag Preservation in the Open Space District. We feel that's a very important way to manage the grasslands, as well as the safety of the property with visitors due to fire, of course. And along with Kashia, we are also big believers in prescribed fire, and we've been working on other prescribed fire projects with CAL FIRE. We haven't yet discussed this, and it may or may not be compatible out at Carrington. We do not know. Meanwhile, this property will serve as a very important link in the California Coastal Trail, which connects Oregon with Mexico. And the anticipated area is, here's the Salmon Creek Highway 1 bridge. And many of you may know that our Coastal Prairie Trail over on Keith Avenue, which is just off this map to the south, is the current endpoint coming this direction of the Coastal Trail. And so we will be looking at how do we connect that, and there may be some options with the Salmon Creek Bridge, but regardless, on this property, we expect the Coastal Trail to pull in somewhere right after the bridge. And from how it goes from here all the way to the north part of the property, we don't know, and that's part of the purpose of our planning and our updated resource analysis. There's all sorts of, not monarch, but other types of butterfly habitat, all sorts of upland wetlands and native grass areas, and many resource constraints. So it's going to be a tricky one, but one of the primary goals is a continuous coastal trail. And it will have to cross Pomo Valley Road. It may or may not be where the driveways are, but probably. And then we anticipate the coastal trail to reconnect somewhere over by Marshall Gulch by Highway 1, and we don't know the details, but we do know that's a component. We also have the ability to have a caretaker on site. And as many of you may know, a number of the buildings, once they were vacated, have been vandalized over the years. And our hope and aim is to prevent any further degradation of the historical resources, the natural resources, everything out there. Let's see here. So after a community-based master plan grounded in science, we will then proceed to phase 1 construction, which will probably be very modest. It'll probably be formalizing a parking lot and a portion or all of the coastal trail. So that is kind of the big picture overview. Many of you locals have been through other previous public meetings with state parks, and we thank you for your long haul, your patience, but we're eagerly awaiting to get this open for everyone, so everyone can enjoy what's really so close to really impacted area in the Bodega Bay zone. So let me take a look at my notes, see if there's anything else I want to mention. Just I think that's a reasonable overview, and open up to questions. I'm sure there's going to be many.
I'll just ask the first question. Is this a place that elk might want to be?
Well, the elk is a really fun question, fun topic. And our understanding is that elk like really, really large areas. Mm-hmm. And they also don't like highway traffic. And there's a lot of surrounding private property here. So one day, perhaps, but it doesn't look very feasible given what we know in the short or midterm. Reintroduction of elk, not just the one individual elk wandering over here that Nita referenced, but reintroduction of elk is extraordinarily complicated. And I don't think we'll be looking at that in the short term.
Okay. I'm following up on the term. When you say this is kind of a long project, are we talking what you described, maybe a 10-year, or how long of a window based on what you just described?
Yes, thank you. So we hope to be starting the guided outings in June is our target time. And then the planning process somewhere around then. The expectation we have of how long it'll take to have a completed master plan. And of course, as you all know too well, we have to go through the Coastal Commission, which adds additional layers of potential approval and scrutiny. Our best guess is 3 to 5 years. Our hope is that we have a very modest, light touch, passive-oriented plan that finds that nice sweet spot and consensus in the community, and it'll just fly on through all the typical regulatory hurdles. But that isn't always the case.
Council members, any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question.
Brooks?
Yeah. So Steve, has there been any grazing, not of elk, but you have cow or sheep, on this property in recent years?
Yes, there has been. There's been, I would say, not continuous, but definitely more than intermittent. So yes, there has been grazing, and the Ag Preservation Open Space has been doing a great job with that, working with local grazers, and we intend to continue that.
Wonderful. That's good to hear. Thanks.
Any other questions from the council?
So
Kathy.
can I'm going to make a comment since I live right across from Chancellor Ranch at Salmon Creek. So looking out my window, I'm looking at the open space there. I will make a comment. There's some great giant coyotes that live on that side of the road because I've seen them.
Oh, great.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we are sure that we have giant coyotes and probably a lot of very healthy giant everything else. Everything from badgers to deer to bobcats to occasional lions. Absolutely. And Salmon Creek itself is just a hotbed.
Who else was trying to ask a question?
Scott, we do have one from an anonymous attendee and questions. Do you want to take that?
Yes, please.
The question is, how do you sign up for guided outings, and what do you expect the capacity of the parking lot to be?
Yes. We will issue a press release and also put out the availability through an e-blast or e-news. Supervisor Hopkins and her team will also help us get the message out. Those slots will fill up quickly, very, very quickly. And we want to pace it. We want to get everyone out there, but we want to do it in a very measured way. So if you have a keen interest, please sign up quickly. The capacity will be driven by COVID and by the van size. So we're not trying to drag a bunch of vehicles out here during the guided tours. The master plan will need to consider the ultimate parking capacity for the park and preserve once it's open. But in the meantime, we're expecting it to be more like groups of, say, 10 or 12, depending upon which COVID tier we're in and the county's own specific regulations.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions? It looks like a wonderful project. As a property owner, I'm sort of jealous with the fun you're going to have.
Thank you. Well, I'll mention that we have many other projects up and down the coast. And I'm sure that myself and other regional park staff will be back to share more. And so we'll spread the love around.
Very good. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it for our calendar items. And now, as we moved earlier, we'll pick up public comment now. Comment from the public regarding items not on the agenda, but related to the Sonoma Coast MAC business. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the Sonoma Coast MAC cannot consider issues or take action on any requests during this comment period. Due to time constraints, please limit your comments to 2 minutes. Jason, is there anyone wishing to?
Yes, we have C. Higgins has her hand raised.
C, please.
C, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. As this is an environmentally focused MAC meeting, I wanted to bring attention to a proposed project by U.S. Fish and Wildlife to drop 1.5 metric tons by helicopter of the toxic second-generation anticoagulant brodifacoum to eradicate house mice on the Farallon Islands just off the Sonoma coastline, and provide an email for folks to send comments. Now, this project was before the Coastal Commission in 2019, and because of all the public opposition and the fact that the applicant didn't answer some critical questions from the Coastal Commission, like what is the contingency plan in case of a spill, or if more non-targeted wildlife are killed, because they couldn't answer that question, they pulled the project, but they're back again this May, and your comments are needed once again. So just some background, brodifacoum is a highly toxic to most living organisms that consume the bait or consume something that has eaten the bait. So much so that California recently passed a law banning its use on the mainland because of the amount of by-killed of our predators, including raptors, foxes, and mountain lions. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife estimates that over 1,700 Westone gulls will die. And as brodifacoum kills slowly, those gulls will fly to the Sonoma coast and die, creating a toxic food source and contaminating our shoreline. In addition, they say that no pellets will go in the water. However, as we all know, the winds and weather off our coast and the sea bluffs, it's highly likely that pellets will get in the water and threaten fish, marine mammals, and crustaceans. In fact, at Wake Island, where they did this, they had to close the fishing for 942 days. Our Bodega Bay fishing fleet, who has faced many shortened seasons and limited catch, can't survive a 3-year closure. So it's important that you send a short email with your views about this poison drop. I've posted an address in the chat and also a website where you can get more information. Thank you.
Thank you, C.
In the question and answer, sorry, I posted it there.
Okay. Jason. Any other comments from the public?
Let's see. We have a leftover question from Steve's presentation. I'll just go ahead and read it so we get it on record. Anonymous attendee, sounds great, yet what kind of impact will this have on our already difficult traffic situation? And we don't have any other hands raised for public comment.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to staff report. Elise, you have some comments to make. Now that we're out of public comment, I think Steve's presentations touched on traffic in that their parking lot is limited and they're using the van, that the traffic impact would be quite limited. I think commenting on that is okay since we're out of comment period and it was really a topic outside of public comment. Elise.
Thank you so much. We have been working hard on that, on road issues on Highway 1, and working with Caltrans on figuring out ways to manage traffic better. So that's actually my very first point today. Seems to go right with that question. First of all, you can see on my screen that Caltrans has responded to our requests, and they are planning on repaving this section that I'm showing you. It goes from Doran Park Road all the way up to Rock Point Beach. That's a very needed change. The paving is going to be done this summer from in the nighttime from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. So it's going to be in July and August this year. It's funded by a state grant, SB1 funding. The project is for pavement preservation, and it's about $4 million and will take about 60 working days. So there will be some work going on Highway 1. I'm very excited about that. One of the problems we have with this, I don't know if problem, it's a coordination issue, is that shortly afterwards, I was notified by Caltrans that the sewer district is also going to be repairing 5,300 feet of sewer main line in Highway 1 spring of 2022, about 6 months after the paving is done. We really don't want the new paving to be dug up by the sewer repair right afterwards. So that's an interesting challenge that they're working to figure out. He says that the repair of the sewer line looks like it's going to be trenchless, which means no digging. So it looks like the issues might be the laterals running to adjacent properties, so which might require cutting into new pavement. But we're doing some research on that. Another thing coming out of Caltrans is that we had been asking for a while for electronic signs on 101. Supervisor Hopkins and Senator McGuire have been really pushing hard to get some access to signs on electronic signs on 101 so that when the traffic gets bad, we'll be able to put up notifications, as have worked well in Marin, that say, you know, these beaches are full, keep going. And Caltrans has identified 5 different electronic signs that currently exist along 101 and have offered that we can put up messages during the season on those signs. We're still looking at getting signs specifically at the turnoffs for River Road and for Highway 12, because we would like to have dedicated signs. So we're still working on that, but I wanted to at least let you know that we do have access this summer to messaging on Highway 101 through their electronic signs that already exist. And as I said, there are 5 of them that they're going to allow us access to. That's exciting. I think that's it from Caltrans. My next update is on the Meredith Wharf Art Project. The Meredith Wharf destruction has been completed, and there's a little bit of leftover money, and the plan with that is to release an RFP within the next month for an art project that will rest at the beginning of Meredith Wharf. We're going to have some community from Bodega Bay on the committee choosing the artist and choosing the theme. We had some suggestions from the beginning, some history of Bodega Bay. Firefighters had suggested a memorial to people lost at sea. There are a lot of different suggestions, and we'll get the community involved in figuring out what will be best in that project. But it's kind of an exciting thing to see the derelict wharf come down that was such a safety hazard, and to put a piece of artwork there that will make it a lovely meditation stopping point to enjoy the view of the bay. I'm going to pass this now to Leo, but before I do that, Leo's going to talk about the LCP status and also some cannabis information. Before I do that, are there any questions on those 2 topics?
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay.
So what about getting Caltrans to label some of the pullouts as no parking spots while they're doing this paving?
My understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that there are pullouts that are already labeled as no parking spots, that are pullout spots, and that don't get ticketed in the summer because the parking is so out of control that, I mean, I'm trying to remember, I think it was who I was driving with that was showing me these points, but there are some points that specifically have no parking areas marked that then don't get ticketed simply because there's no other place for the cars to go, which is a whole nother larger question. And we're gonna talk about the parking ad hoc report that Brooks is going to report, and I'm working on a couple things on parking as well. So we are working on the parking problem, but I'm not sure if adding more signs that are not enforced is going to help us. Although if we can figure out ways to provide more parking, then we would be able to put that up and enforce it. One of the ideas that I've been speaking with regional parks about is getting some fields, and also with Caltrans and state parks, is getting some fields or other parking areas and having some shuttle service coming through. At the Bodega Bay community meeting, there was also the suggestion of talking with the bus service to try to get more bus service on the weekend. So we've identified some spaces, some open fields and open spaces. One that the state parks has usually used during festivals and things that they would let us use. And I'm also talking with a parking app organization called Pavement. Maybe we can have a parking app that would help us not only manage those fields and lots, but also give us a way to communicate with day use people. You know, keep going, there's no parking left, or, you know, please don't park here, or here's where bathrooms are. So anything that gives us an opportunity to communicate with those people in our cars is, I think, a good idea. So yeah, lots of things to talk about regarding parking.
Okay.
Elise, this is Paul. I have a question.
Yes, Paul?
Yeah. I think in the January meeting, we talked about providing additional warnings of deadly surf on the coast when it becomes terrible. Do you happen to know if these electronic signs on Highway 1 that Caltrans would provide are only traffic related, or could they have a message on there?
Yes,
as in deadly surf on the coast.
Yeah, that is in our plan to put that there. That is one of the messages that is rotating through. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Additionally, state parks has made available, I don't know if you've noticed, but there are some old signs that were put up, I believe in the 70s, all across the coastline of California. Warning signs. However, they were devised in Southern California, and they were devised for Southern Californian conditions. And so they don't necessarily make a lot of sense here. So regional parks is making up new signs and replacing. So state parks doesn't have the money to do new signage there like that, but regional parks has volunteered to create the signage for us, and then they're going to replace the signs that are in state parks land along Highway 1. So we do have some new signage about safety for the Sonoma Coast in route, and we will also put that up on the electronic signs as well.
Thank you, Elise.
I see Brooks's hand up.
Yes. This is all great. I love all this news. I'm wondering about the electronic signs out on 101. How timely are they going to be? What's the lag time of getting the information on the sign saying beaches are full, move on, beaches are open? Because hopefully it will be effective. And if we get people moving on, it's Saturday midday, but by the afternoon, maybe the beaches parking will be open again.
Good question. I do not know the answer. I will find out, because we have to start preparing for it now.
Yeah. And I think it is important. We can't just get a message up there that stays on for 24 hours, even though conditions can kind of change. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, hopefully we can get something that it really reflects time.
Yeah, I'll be coordinating with the parks folks and diving deeper into that now that we've got the basic agreement in place.
Yeah. Okay, and of course, one more question. What about, we keep wanting to count cars going through Bodega Bay. Has there been any talk about getting that in
Oh,
place?
yeah, didn't I send you the report?
No, that's been done.
Yeah, it's been done. We have a report. We have a report of last year from like July 4th last year. Yeah, it's been done and was reported on. I will. I'll pull that up and send it out to everybody on the Coast MAC. I can post it as well. But yeah, that's been done.
Yes, you did send it to me, but it only showed peak periods of when things happened, and it really, I don't think it addresses the question of numerically how many cars are going through Bodega Bay. We want to count.
Well, let's look at that together.
Okay.
Okay, let's come up with a time and look at that together. I don't remember it that clearly at this moment. I just remember seeing all the little colored bars, and so we'll look at that together, and then I can know better what questions to ask Caltrans to follow up on. But they, it's great because for years it was just really difficult, and now we've really established an ongoing rapport, and so I hope that things can move a little bit faster now.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? We've got to move along, but I want.
Okay.
I want to mention that if you could do that in Elise, something more current, with the traffic count, that would be great.
Okay.
All right. Leo?
Great, thank you. I'll try to be relatively brief on my update. So I'm going to just speak very quickly to the LCP, and then I'll follow that with just a brief update on cannabis. So for the LCP, I know that a number of you attended the meetings that were held by Permit Sonoma, where they talked about issues such as natural resources and environmentally sensitive habitat mapping, as well as some of the other key topics. But I'm sure some of you noticed that the pesticide regulations and vacation rentals were initially going to be the two primary initial topics that they were going to have, and they ended up postponing those. So I did get some information speaking to Brian O, who's over the planning group there. And what he let me know is that they will be doing those future workshops for pesticides and vacation rentals, but that the vacation rentals, with the understanding that the coastal zone is very different than the rest of the county, they're planning to spend a lot of time this year on the vacation rental issue. So they plan to have a coastal zone related vacation rental discussion as part of that process. And so, I emphasized to him that, how different everything is in the coastal zone area, and he understands that. So the goal is to find something that's going to be even more useful for Permit Sonoma as well as for the general public. On pesticide regulations, I think he pointed out that a lot of the agencies that are responsible for the pesticide issues are not Permit Sonoma, they're other agencies. And so I think he's trying to find a way to bring in the right parties and to have a more productive conversation. So those two things are not forgotten, they're just kind of still in the works. And I think he's trying to rethink the format. I thought the ones that I attended in terms of the workshops were useful, but I could see why he would want to improve on the format to make them a little bit more informative and interactive. I'll also post the link to the main LCP website into the chat. Are there any questions or comments on that piece before I move into cannabis? I don't have the participant slide up, Jason. Oh, I see Marty.
Marty, go ahead. Unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, something that I'm confused about, Leo, is what the process will be, to wit. Under the previous effort before COVID, their plan was to rewrite the draft incorporating the comments and reorganizing the draft so it was shorter. It's currently about 600 pages long, and they were going to rewrite the whole thing. Now, Gary Helfrich is saying they will not rewrite anything, and they'll be presenting the same draft that existed before COVID started, that we commented on already. And I'm confused because I don't understand whether or not the comments that everybody made on that draft, which is still the draft that's posted on their website, will be considered in what's ultimately presented to the Planning Commission or not. And I just don't know. And there isn't any information about that on the website.
Marty, I heard him say something very similar to that in one of the meetings. I mean, my understanding is that, and I think it's understandable from a version control standpoint, they're trying to keep that draft as the document that's going to go to the Planning Commission. And then I would hope he would present all of the key comments and any changes that would be recommended to the Planning Commission based on the public response. And then I believe they would then update the draft based on the Planning Commission's recommendations to before they move that draft forward to the board. So I would think that that would be the time that they would do those edits. But we could reconfirm with Gary and try to get that in writing exactly when we'll see the next written update and what they're doing to track and recommend sort of the comments that have come in.
That would be wonderful, because we made a lot of our comments were corrections of errors of fact.
Right.
And it would be comforting to know that the errors of fact were going to be corrected.
That makes a lot of sense.
To the Board of Supervisors for approval.
I can definitely see, especially for things that are factual versus policy choices, that if they had like a clear kind of document that shows all of the corrections and then all of the additional, feedback based on policy issues, I could see that being a good way to go. So let's find out what the plan is in terms of how they plan to present to the Planning Commission.
Okay, we're trying to stay flexible and ready to quickly review what needs to be reviewed when it needs to be reviewed, but not having any idea of what the game plan is makes that difficult.
That's understandable.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Okay.
Leo, we do have one question in the Q&A from an anonymous attendee.
Sure.
And the question is, the workshop about the housing element of the LCP was also postponed. Do you have an update about the housing element?
I thought they held the housing update. They postponed pesticides and vacation rentals. They should have video recordings of all the ones that they did hold. And I believe they did hold that one. I think Lynda might even have been on that one, just kind of watching it.
Housing was held because I attended. Yeah.
But I can follow up and ask if they will be posting the videos, because I don't see them currently on the website, and I believe that they were intending to do that. So if it's possible, I'll ask them to prioritize getting that out so that people can see what took place. Anything else there from the public or the MAC? Okay, so I'm gonna move forward to cannabis, and I'll do a quick share screen. I think that will probably just be easiest. So Wanda had asked me about whether it might be possible to do an update on the cannabis ordinance, and looking more closely into it, we realized that for most of the MAC that the cannabis ordinance would not apply because it's for unincorporated areas of Sonoma County, but not the coastal zone. So it's possible that, as the rest of the county's policy gets developed, that it could inform something in the future. But as we all know, the coastal zone is unique. So really, this is applying to the rest of the county for unincorporated areas. WANDA did flag that the Fort Ross district includes areas that are not within the LCP area, so they would be under this, the new cannabis program as well. But since this is such a big thing, I did want to make sure at least people are aware that it's happening. I'm on the main cannabis website page right now, which hopefully you can see. There's a lot of documents in there, but I think that if you look, there's a staff report that's a 14-page document. That's the summary by staff. That's audience is the Planning Commission, who will be hearing it tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So that's an opportunity to get more information and to have your voice heard. Additionally, there were 4 town halls that had been held previously. And while they don't yet have the town halls up, they're promising them to be up this week. And I found that their PowerPoints are pretty useful. So I pulled the PowerPoint and I'm only going to share with you 3 of the slides. So this one just talks about kind of what this ordinance is doing. So it expands ministerial permit operations for cannabis cultivation on parcels located in agricultural and resource-owned areas while retaining discretionary use options. And for the reason for why they're doing this change, it's to promote agricultural diversity and a sustainable local economy by identifying more projects that qualify for staff-issued permits based on specific and objective ministerial standards that are protective of the public health, safety, welfare, and the environment. And so in this document, they actually like itemize the types of changes that they're proposing. So this is a way to get kind of a high level snapshot. They have basically 7 sections of slides with really minimal technical changes, 3 sections with some moderate changes, and then there's 5 sections toward the end which are substantial changes. So if you wanted to just go in and see the big changes that are taking place, you could just look in the slideshow and scroll toward the end, and you can see some of that information. So that's it's pretty understandable. And then if you want to dig in further, you could reference the staff report or some of the other main documents on their website. So in the substantial changes section, you can see they talk about like how they're making proposals to change canopy and structure information. They discuss setbacks. And so there's a lot of key topics in there that the public might find useful. And so again, you can kind of get to all of that information from this Sonoma County Cannabis page. I'll go ahead and paste the link into the chat once I'm done talking to you all. But again, all of the official documents were posted a few weeks ago, and they're available here. There was some confusion about the documents because there were some preliminary documents released on January 31. But they were fully updated and those official documents were put up here on February 16th. And so you can pull any of those documents from this page. So again, I know that it's only indirectly related to most of your areas, but I wanted to just make sure you were aware of that in case this is something that you are following. After the Planning Commission hears it, it's slated to come to the Board of Supervisors on April 13th if the Planning Commission is able to take an action to move it forward. Can I answer any questions or help clarify anything?
Leo, I just want to thank you for this. I mean, and the webpage is really good, but this is a little bit more updated than the last time I looked at it. So, so thank you.
Sure, and they are working to try to constantly do those updates. For example, they in the workshops did not answer the FAQs in the workshops because they wanted to give consistent, accurate answers that were vetted by council. So the FAQ page is still very limited, but they're planning on putting the answers there so that everybody can see those key questions. And I know that you had submitted some questions for the record, and people are welcome to send emails to cannabis@sonoma-county.org. And even after the Planning Commission makes their action, you can still, of course, give feedback before it reaches the Board of Supervisors. So I hope that they do some really good vetting and prepare something that makes its way to the board that the board will be able to move forward with. It's taken a lot of work and people have waited a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Elise, are you finished or did you want to close something?
That's it for me.
Okay. And moving on to ad hoc reports. Brooks, would you like to report on the parking ad hoc committee?
Yes, yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
Just to give some background to our audience, the Coast MAC appointed an ad hoc committee last November to look into residential parking permits and other parking issues on the Sonoma Coast. The committee consists of Kathy Beck, who's Bodega Bay, Scott Farmer, Timber Cove, Liz Gallagher, Jenner, and myself, who also is Bodega Bay. Elise helped guide us through this process and was very helpful as a resource. In order to obtain coastal residents' feedback, we designed a survey and launched it in January. Each of the MAC members were asked to distribute the website to their communities. The survey was then closed on March 1st of this year, and I want to share the results that we were able to tabulate. My presentation isn't as formal as the other people. As you can see, we had 303 participants in the survey. And the questions that were quantitative and that we could give you numbers, I've listed here. Would your neighborhood be interested in residential parking permits, RPP? 46 said yes, 54 said no. Very close. Do you live on the Sonoma Coast? Of these 303 people, 89% did, 11 were outside of the coastal area. Where did the people live? 54% lived in Bodega Harbor, represented 160 people, 13 of whom said they would be willing to work on parking issues for Bodega Bay, as well as for the harbor. Salmon Creek had 8%, Old Town 4%, Carmet 10%, Serena Del Mar 6%, Bodega Bay West Side was 1%, Jenner 4%, Timber Cove 1%, others 12%. And those were river people. They were people who are in Sebastopol, and also I think there were a couple maybe from Santa Rosa. Would you pay a $25 RPP permit? 46% said yes, 54% no. Do you see a need for the residential parking permit in your neighborhood? 40% said yes, 60% said no. Would you like enforceable zones, meaning areas where we could say there would be no parking? It might be like a loading zone or something like that. Yes, 51% said, no, 32%. Then we may be in future. What is the time frame that you would like some type of parking enforcement? And the winner there was year-round at 44%, weekends and holidays at 33%. Would you be interested or support paid parking lots? And 33% said yes, 67% said no. Then there were two questions. Let's see, I'm just trying, over here. 2 questions where we asked, whoops, sorry. Jason, I lost it. You're sharing, maybe it'll come back.
We're still seeing it.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not. But that's okay. Two questions. People were able to write out responses, and that was question number 2 and 5. The major concerns expressed were safety issues and emergency service access. Many people said need more public parking. offer shuttles to key tourist spots, limit parking to one side of Highway 1. Yeah, it's down here, there, okay. Limit parking spaces to one side of Highway 1, no parking on the other side. Restrict visitor parking at key access points to coastal trails and beaches, i.e. Serena Del Mar, Carmet, Salmon Creek, Bodega Harbor Beach Steps, Pinnacle Gulch, Swordtail Gulch. Trash. Everybody was mentioning trash. Please need more receptacles to put trash. Street signs, i.e. no beach access and maybe residential parking only, for examples. Left turns onto and from Highway 1 to allow a better flow of traffic, i.e. at Dorn Park, Smith Brothers, Bodega Avenue and Taylor Lane, Lucas Wharf, and East Shore Road. Now, there was an overwhelming number of comments dealing with Bodega Bay. Let's see, I think I can get, we can turn off the shared screen, Jason, if you want to, okay. There was an overwhelming number of comments dealing with Bodega Bay. Therefore, the committee is recommending that Kathy, Beck, and myself distribute the remarks to those people who volunteered to work on parking issues. And if they want to pursue further discussions, we will be available to help them. Also, we will pass along the concerns that were repeatedly stated in the survey to Caltrans and to TPW. We feel the ad hoc committee has served its purpose and we recommend that it be dissolved. That's my report.
Were there any quick comments or questions? Our time is short, but we want to give it in.
Good job, Brooks.
Yes.
Thanks, Kathy. You were part of it.
Yeah.
Let's work down our list and then we'll. So next is there was an e-bike letter for Bodega Bay. Do you want to say something about that? Was that Kathy or Brooks, one of you?
Well, yeah, Brooks actually composed the letter. She did a great job, and I believe that it's already been sent out, and it was in our packet.
Yes.
Just addressing the concerns that we have about more and more e-bikes being used on the coastal trail, the Prairie Coastal Trail here, and asking that signage be put up that prohibits it before it gets out of control.
Okay. We had Pole Mountain on the list, but I think Wanda, was there anything to say about that or?
Not really, but I realize we want to talk about dissolving ad hoc committees. Paul, do you want to say something about
Well, I'll do that. We'll do that. We'll get to that next.
Okay. I want to just quickly say about Pole Mountain, they're still collecting money. They're planning on demolition soon. While the demolition's going on, the camera will be put on a pole. And right now the camera is not functioning, but it will be, by fire season. And
okay.
That's all.
Yeah.
Cindy.
Sorry, it's Cindy. I just, under item C, we probably don't need to discuss it, but it's TOT application timing. I don't think that came up. Is that just ignored?
There's nothing to discuss there tonight.
Okay, thank you.
So as Brooks suggested, and the members of the parking ad hoc agree, is that we'll sunset the parking ad hoc committee, and as well, the emergency preparedness committee that Paul chaired as well. We feel we've done our served the purpose, but in the event that an event arises where we're needed again, we can reform it.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to suggest that we form an ad hoc to study when we might be able to hold our meetings in person. There's a feeling that it's getting close, but I think we would all want it to be done right. And is there anyone that would like to be on an ad hoc to look at that as a, that just so that we do it knowing the facts and that everybody's comfortable and you know, whether it's 2, 4, or 6 months from now, but at least we start talking about it so that, you know, it's just not 2 people deciding. Marty's hands up.
I'll volunteer if anyone is really seriously considering meeting in person in 2 months, because I think that's insane.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we meet in 2 months. I'm suggesting that an ad hoc be formed to know when the right time is.
Yes, Scott, I'll work with Marty. Sure.
Okay, 2. And this is also available to our alternates. If there's any alternates that want to be involved. This is
I would like to be involved, please.
Okay, Anne, well.
Thank you.
And there's a 4th position. Anyone else want to participate in that? Any alternates, other alternates? I'm trying not to, there we go, Liz.
Well, I could do that. I mean, I've gotten kind of used to this stay-at-home stuff. It's pretty nice. So
okay.
After working all day, and I'm like, oh, I don't have to really totally get dressed up and run out again or something. But anyway,
we decide to have a combination of the two, like sometimes being out together,
yeah,
sometimes
well,
having your
like,
Zoom.
Yeah, this time of year will be great to be inside when it's been so cold. So that'll be we'll have a winter meetings or something. So, okay, well, I'll go ahead and put my gray hair into the ring here. So,
how would you like to chair it?
No. Sorry.
Anne or Marty, Paul just was a chair. Anybody? Somebody raise their hand to chair.
May we decide who's going to chair it when we meet for the first time?
Okay, so Marty will call the first meeting and you'll decide amongst yourselves. Is that okay?
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Thank you, all of you. So agenda items. We have the large agenda item of tourist impacts, which is really a large subject, which many things like parking fit into, the signs. And so I'm calling for agenda items, suggestions. Contact any of your reps if you're wanting to share something. You're always able to call District 5 staff, any of us, but the percolation of ideas for agenda items we need to come forward. So some of the agenda items on tonight's agenda were just such, they percolated up. Also, the community in general, I get some feedback as they're not quite sure what we're doing. And so as council members and alternatives, members of our community, people that are in the public here, just share every opportunity you have. And that's any ideas for agenda items right now from any of the council members? Okay.
Well, I would just, I think, well, one of the things would be just an update on the Carrington Ranch, how that's going. Because it seems to be sort of it's been on the agenda, but I think it would be nice. Let's see, it would be getting close to opening up their first tours at our next meeting. So that's just one suggestion.
All right.
Just an update on it.
I was thinking maybe they should give us a special tour.
Yeah, I could walk there.
Our own special
I would
tour.
walk there from my house.
Yeah.
Okay, any others? Okay, as I said, the door is always open, and it can be, and big topics, maybe if it's too big, like tourist impact, we'll break it into smaller pieces, and please speak up, we're listening. Okay, I think that we're finished. A little bit past 7:30, my apologies.
We have a motion to adjourn.
I still move. Oh.
Okay, and a second.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll just go quickly through to be consistent. So let's see, Scott,
Aye.
Marty,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Abby,
Aye.
Wanda,
Aye.
Liz,
Aye.
Brooks,
Aye.
and Kathy.
Aye.
Okay, we're done.
Thank you.
Good
Good
Thank you,
meeting.
everybody.
Thank you.
Aye.
See you later.
Seeing you
Bye.
all.
Thanks for
Bye.
everybody.
Thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing my birthday with me.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday to
Birthday
you.
to you.
Oh, I really gotta get off now.
Darn. Gonna get started.